Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, and today we are going to take a look at the most heroic sacrifice a noble from Ainz had ever offered. But before we're going to do so, let me thank my Patreons for supporting this channel. Furthermore, I say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function who made one-time donations. Also please check out my fantasy channel, it's linked down in the description. Now with that said, let's start with the topic of why King Ramposa offering his head was such a brilliant political move. After Philip concluded his brilliant plan of attacking the Sorcerer King's grain transport to the Holy Kingdom successfully, the Great Tomb of Nazarick was forced to act. Meanwhile at court, King Ramposa came to a different conclusion. He believed that the poor Philip had been mind-controlled in order to attack the grain convoy of the Sorcerer Kingdom, because realistically speaking no man could possibly be that stupid. Well, not quite right, I'm afraid. The court assumed that all of this was just a pretext staged by the Sorcerer Kingdom in order to justify hostile actions. Nonetheless, it was still discussed to just offer the offending noble's head as a sacrifice in order to appease the Sorcerer Kingdom's wrath. But King Ramposa refused to sacrifice a, from his point of view, innocent nobleman to a vile undead. Instead, he wanted to lead by example and prevented any harm occurring to his people. And once Albedo showed up to deliver the declaration of war, King Ramposa did something that even surprised Albedo. He offered his own head as compensation after bowing to the Prime Minister of the Sorcerer Kingdom in apology. Side note, in the 12th volume of Overlord that plays out before the 14th one, from which this scene is taken, it was established by no other than Nea Baraya herself that it is common knowledge that a king should not bow his head because he represents the entirety of his nation with his actions and his behavior. And in book number 13, after Ainz bowed his head to Albedo and Demiurge, both were panicked and embarrassed, and even ordered Lupus Regina to raise the head of the Sorcerer King, because simply bowing one's head as a king and leader had so much weight behind it. So Ramposa bowing his head had a clear and real powerful meaning behind it, and allowing the Sorcerer King to then take his head via Albedo was the equivalent to taking the head of his entire people and nobility in a symbolic act of submission and apology. And under normal circumstances, Albedo would have reported back to the Sorcerer King, who, just like he did back with Count Femal, would have forgiven the kingdom for the transgression of Philip. So again, and I have to really highlight this, King Ramposa offering his head as compensation was a really great political move and a heroic act from King Ramposa, firmly establishing him as one of the good guys. But sadly, being good in Overlord doesn't mean anything, because in Albedo's mind, Ainz had already made up his, and ordered the complete destruction of the kingdom of Ainz in order to serve as an example for others. But now the reputation of the Sorcerer King itself was on the line, and therefore Ainz needed to serve as an example to other nations. It was no longer just about the nation itself, it was about showing what will happen if you defy Ainz Ooal. You have two choices. Bow your head immediately and you will be rewarded and treated well, like the Empire had been. Refuse and act up, and your entire nation will face the wrath of the Sorcerer Kingdom. And therefore, no matter what the king would have done, the kingdom's fate at this point had already been sealed. There was nothing more to be done than to go through the formalities of declaring war and then invade. So ultimately this heroic move from King Ramposa, something that would have saved the kingdom under any other circumstance, had been in vain. And the invasion will still continue as the Sorcerer King has supposedly planned. Now, with all of that said, the Sorcerer Kingdom is really going to wage an actual war here, because from Albedo's and Demiurge's perspective, the Kingdom of Ainz had already been shown, via the massacre of the Cuts Plain, how futile any further resistance was. So now that even the summoning of 5 Dark Young, by the Sorcerer King himself, failed to keep the kingdom in line, it needed to be destroyed. And in the minds of the Floor Guardian, of Demiurge specifically, the massacre at the Cuts Plain should have been sufficient to act as the stick, because the Empire after all went right ahead and became a vassal state of the Sorcerer Kingdom. So from the Floor Guardian's perspective, they really needed to hammer home that resisting the Sorcerer Kingdom is a death sentence for an entire nation, in order to make an example out of them, because apparently Splat alone was still insufficient. Punish 1, teach 100. This is why they are going to wage war. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Betgaye, Bet Burrito 316, B Zer, Ben C, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Duckwagon, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kylar, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Normal Toad, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantum, Personage, Primus 11, Cune Caracos P, Shergox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc War Boss, Rocket Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.